Hello, Steve Camp.
Hello.
We're live on our website. Stand by for Facebook.
I see us there, Jeff.
Yes.
Ready, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Okay, at this time, I'll call this City of Gallatin Council Committee meeting October 13th to order. And before we get started, I've got to read this and we vote on it. Pursuant to the Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16, 34, and 51, and 60, and the need to limit the community spread of COVID, the October 13th, 2020 Gallatin Council Committee meeting will be held electronic means, and the meeting will be live streamed to protect the public health, safety, and welfare of the City Council and citizens of Gallatin. If you want to join this meeting, you can join it by dialing 1-470-250-9358. Webinar number 892-9959-6869. And also, I was told, Mary, you might help me with this, but there's a link that was sent out and it got deleted. There was another that come up at 5:55. So if you downloaded that before that time, you might want to look on the screen and get on the link that's on the screen at this time, because the other link is not correct.
Yeah, if you've accessed the link through social media, you should be here with us on the Zoom meeting. If you did not, either go to social media or go to our website, gallatintn.gov, and the link should work correctly now. And we apologize for the technical difficulties. It happens from time to time.
Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. At this time, do I have a motion and a second to do the committee meeting by electronic?
I move.
Motion, second.
Motion been made by Councilwoman Love, second by Mr. Alexander. Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp.
Aye.
Councilman Alexander.
Present.
Councilman Fan.
Yeah.
Councilman Fennell. Councilman Fennell.
He's not
Councilman-
joining us this evening. He is attending a function tonight.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
Councilman Hayes.
Present.
Councilwoman Love.
Here.
Okay. This is the vote on the electronic meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
And
Thank you.
Councilman Overton. Councilman Overton.
It passed unanimously, so at this time, we'll have a roll call. Ms. Kittrell?
Vice Mayor Camp.
Present.
Councilman Alexander.
Present.
Councilman Fan.
Here.
Councilman Hayes.
Present.
Councilwoman Love.
Here.
Councilman Overton.
Present.
Councilman Fennell is absent this evening, but we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Kittrell. At this time, we approve the minutes from September 22nd, 2020. Do I hear a motion?
So moved. Motion approved.
Motion been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion been made, properly second. Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Hold on. I've got to change.
Okay, sorry, Ms. Love.
It's on page 8. It says that the council agreed to continue the 4th of July fireworks display Sunday, July 4th, 2020, and it should be 2021.
Oh, good catch.
So noted.
Thank you.
Any other changes? If not, Ms. Kittrick, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
and Councilman Overton.
Present, yes, sorry, yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Kittrill. At this time, we'll have public recognition on anything that's on the agenda. Mr. Henschel, is anybody that wants to speak?
Yes, if anyone, the protocol is if you're on a cell phone, please use *9 to raise your hand. Looks like we don't have anyone on cell phone. Please use the raise your hand function, and if you mouse over the bottom of your screen, that will appear on your PC. Otherwise, there'll be a button if you're using the app. Frank Marchese has raised his hand. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just realized this was a council meeting, not a working session, so what I have is not agenda related. I'll hold.
No, this is a committee meeting, not a council meeting.
You just asked for agenda related items. This is not agenda. Am I
Okay.
correct in speaking now on non-agenda items?
Yes, you can speak.
Thank you. Mayor and council, I understand that the council has a very important agenda to get to, but I come to you with council with concerns of safety. Once again, on Harris Lane, we are experiencing a lot more volume of trucks coming out of Liberty Creek, exceeding the 35-mile-an-hour speed limit on this road. I have asked for help in the past. I have, I don't know who to turn to. I have not reached out to Chief Bandy directly. I have reached out to a council member and I was told that they didn't know what to tell me. So I'm asking for some help in either getting the speed limit lowered and enforced on this street, making a change on this street, or please putting some kind of speed deterrent on this road. I walked down the middle of the, not the middle of the road, I walked down the side of the unlined road during the day, and I have dump trucks whizzing past my dog and I as I'm going down this road. It has a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit, which is constantly ignored. I'm not even gonna bring up the left-hand turns and the pork chop and all that. I need something done to enforce the speed limit on this street. It is dangerous. There are children, families with children moving into Liberty Creek. These children walk down the street. There's a lot more people walking down my little section of Harris Lane now, and it is an accident waiting to happen. And I happen to think it's a fatality waiting to happen because the road does have curves in it and it's hard to see when trucks are speeding down the road that you're on the other side of that bend. So I am please asking for help from the council. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Frank.
Thank you,
Anybody?
sir. Yeah, just give a last chance to anybody to raise their hand if you'd like to speak very quickly. Okay, I don't see anyone else.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll move on at this time. Mayor's comments.
Thank you, Councilman Overton. I do have just two things to share with you. First, I don't know if you have caught the news. It showed up on some Google alerts and stuff for me, but there hasn't been a lot of fanfare, but there should be from this council that Boise Cascade has announced their relocation to Gallatin this past week. Boise Cascade Company has completed the purchase of a new property with building structures in Gallatin. That property is the former home of Fowler Lumber. I'm quoting from the press release. The acquisition of this new facility will allow us to expand our operations in the Nashville market, one of the strongest housing growth markets in the U.S., said Jeff Strom, Vice President and Building Materials Distribution General Manager of Eastern Operations. The 13-acre facility currently has 183,000 square feet of warehouse and office space. The company plans to start construction and site improvements immediately, with the goal to begin operations in the new facility in second quarter of 2021. Boise Cascade BMD currently employs 44 associates at their Nashville location. With their anticipated growth, they expect the number of associates to grow substantially, bringing many new jobs to the city of Gallatin. So I wanted to share that with you all. Another important addition to our city, and I know that they will be welcomed here and find great success here. I also want to mention just a huge compliment to one of our staff in association with Manufacturing Month that we talked about last week. Jasmine Grimm, who is the lead on existing industry in the Economic Development Agency, has been going around to our manufacturing. She, along with Jeff Henschel, have been taking videos to showcase our manufacturing community. And so she's been interacting with them very extensively, and then putting some great insights into these companies that operate in our community onto social media so that the rest of our community can learn about them. So she's done a great job with those, and I really commend her. She's been with the city for a little while, but this has been a huge effort, and one that she has pretty much solely done on her own with some help from Jeff Henschel. So thanks to you too, Jeff, but certainly my compliments to Jasmine, and big thanks as well. I think that concludes my comments for the evening. I will have an item or two under other business.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we'll move on to the agenda items. Item number 1.
Mr.
Bill McCoy.
Mr. Overton,
Yes, sir.
could we move item number 10 up
Yes, sir. Where would you like to move it to, Mr. Alexander?
after number 2, before 3?
After number 2. With no objection, we'll move item number 10 to item number after number 2. Mr. McCord, item number 1.
Thank you, Council. This first item is a request by the Planning Commission and the Architectural Advisory Committee to amend the zoning code. Articles 12, which is our supplementary district regulations, and Article 13, which is our performance standards, and specifically the architectural provisions and the compatibility provisions of the architectural regulations. What's occurred here is that there was a decision made by the Board of Zoning Appeals last January that essentially overturned how staff has traditionally applied that section of the code. And as a result of that, we had approached the Planning Commission and asked for some discussion and consideration on how we might want to address the code to refine it in such a way that we could have a more efficient operation of applying the code and when it pertains to architecture. The BZA determined that the compatibility provisions in the code also applied to the materials section of the code, even though there are separate sections. Now, I'm going to share the screen here, and let me go back to our supplementary district regulations. So I'm going to kind of move around here. As you can see on the screen there, the basic design criteria is described in the materials section of code, identifies various zoning districts, and these are the older zoning districts in town that were required to provide a design with certain materials, but these certain zoning districts were accepted from the brick and stone requirements. But then as we got down further into the code, whoops, went too fast, excuse me. There's a section B called compatibility of the adjacent buildings. So the BZA, because of the wording that was used, it says in most cases, other than those described in section 130810, they took that even in those zoning districts that are exempt, as described in section A, that the architectural provisions of compatibility with adjacent buildings also applied in those accepted districts. That's not how it's been applied even before I was here. And there's a number of places in town where both new homes built in old areas and accessory structures built in old areas were not held to that standard that the MBZA, through their interpretation, required us to then begin to change that. So what happened is we took it back to the Planning Commission and asked for their comments and suggestions on what we should do, and they had recommended that an advisory committee be created to study this matter. The mayor, a little bit later in the spring, the mayor did appoint 3 members to this advisory committee, and one is a structural engineer and one is an architect locally, and the other is a builder who's also the vice chair of the Planning Commission. So they worked through most of the summer with several meetings, went back and forth. We presented a lot of material to them, and there was a lot of discussion about how the code is written now. And we also worked with our city attorney's office to refine the language that we thought would address the concerns that we've had and the applicability of the code. So what you have before you on the screen and also in your agenda package is a draft ordinance, and I'll go back up to the top here, and it starts with this Exhibit A, and it does 2 things as recommended by the Architectural Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission. It amends the supplementary district regulations to effectively change the setback requirements for larger accessory structures. So right now, an accessory structure can be built on a lot. Let's assume a residential lot, as close as 4 feet from a lot line, a side or rear lot line. So we have kind of a 2-tier system of accessory structures. We have ones that are larger than 200 square feet, which require a building permit, and those that are less than 200 square feet do not require a building permit. So we retain the existing setback requirement for those smaller accessory structures that do not require a building permit, and they can locate within 4 feet of a lot line, assuming of course there's no easement there. Whereas the larger accessory structures, the committee suggested that they have to comply with the same setback of a primary structure. So if you had an accessory garage, which was 600 square feet or so, it would have to meet the same setbacks as your house. Whereas if you had a little utility shed where people commonly put their lawnmowers and so forth, those could probably be set back only 4 feet from a property boundary. So they wanted to refine that, so that they recommended that change in Article 12. In Article 13, and I'll let the vice chair of the Planning Commission discuss this also with you. He's online. And what they decided to do is not to apply the compatibility provisions to these certain zoning districts, and that the materials section, just as it's shown in subsection A, would then read as it did before, and it would just add in subsection B, skip down too far again, in subsection B, that, let me get there real quick. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my screen here. That subsection B, and this was language suggested by the attorney, that we also, instead of referencing those accepted districts in subsection B, that we actually list them. So we listed them, and then we said in all cases instead of most cases. So we just changed that language so that the architectural provisions for compatibility purposes do not apply in these accepted districts. Now, one issue that we have, and of course we can always go back to the MBZA case, is that when the compatibility section is applied, you have all of these items that pertain to a building, such as massing, scale, proportion, opening, roof types, glazed openings, degree of detail, and even the materials section. So if you were you had a vacant lot between 2 houses, and one house on one side of you was made of hardy board, and the others was brick, what do you apply? Half and half of the material. So it's very difficult for one to determine how you would go about applying some materials. In very old neighborhoods, you may have vinyl siding homes or clapboard homes and so forth. And if someone wanted to come in and build a brick home on the lot that was in between them, they wouldn't be permitted to because it wouldn't be compatible with the other homes that are already in existence in the area. So it creates problems for us. And there was a reason, I think, that they exempted these older zoning districts. Most of these older zoning districts are not in areas that are covered by homeowners associations, which generally govern how structures are built and materials that are applied. So what I want to just kind of summarize before I hand off to Matt is that the Architectural Advisory Committee approved the draft as you see it here, as well as the Planning Commission also recommends approval of this draft. So assuming that you're comfortable with this, then we will move this on to a first reading in next week's meeting. So if Mr. Harris, I would like for him to speak on this. They did spend a lot of time on it, and he has some relevant points I think they're important to make.
Hey, Bill, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a minute ago you were talking about, but I think you're talking about adjacent buildings. You're not talking about if you got a vinyl siding house and somebody wants to build a brick house next to it. We're talking about adjacent buildings, correct?
Yes, that's what's described here in this section
Okay.
B here.
Well, your example, I think you said if somebody wanted to build a brick house next to a siding house.
Yep.
That's not an adjacent building. I look at compatibility as compatibility with the house that they have. Like somebody has a brick house and, you know, maybe build a brick detached structure.
Well, this talks about adjacent properties. So if someone had a siding home on one side of you, and then you have a home that's kind of a combination of siding and a brick, and on the middle home, and then the other home on the opposite side is all brick, then if they were just building an accessory structure, then conceivably you're kind of left as to what perhaps they would have to build the one on the property, half siding, half brick, or maybe all brick or all siding. I don't know how you apply that. And many times there's properties, not just adjacent to two properties, you may have 3 or 4 properties around you.
So
Yeah.
Bill, are we not just asking to be the homeowners association for these developments that don't have one? Is that what we're doing?
Well, I'm thinking Mr. Harris might be able to address the concerns and things like that were brought up and discussed at the Architectural Advisory Committee meeting.
Matt, go ahead and speak, Matt.
Oh, absolutely. No, good evening, Mayor and council members. Mr. McCord did an excellent job of explaining the suggested changes, so I won't bore you with repeating every detail. Really at the end of the day, I think Mr. Overton's asking the right question, and that was a lot of the discussion throughout the advisory committee's meetings was where the line becomes that the city becomes a homeowners association for neighborhoods that don't have restrictive covenances, and how do you interpret very subjective standards of what's compatible and what's not compatible. So what the committee focused on with respect to the architectural compatibility standards was essentially clarifying the city ordinance to read with an interpretation that falls in line with the way planning for, best I can tell, the last 20 years has applied the ordinance. So, and so that, you know, there's more clarification. And one of the things we found when we got into the conversations about how many areas of town would be affected by this, I think what we really discussed a lot about was this really only affects small numbers of communities where they have no restrictive covenances, no homeowners associations. So if a neighborhood has a homeowners association that has restrictive covenances that don't allow certain types of construction materials, that would apply. The city doesn't get involved in that. So this really comes down to those few communities that don't have an HOA or had one at one time and let it expire.
So Matt, the question is, to me, is who's going to determine what's compatible, what's not compatible?
So, Mr. Overton, really in those zoning districts that are listed in the ordinance, that the A, R40, R20, 15, A, INRG, nobody would interpret whether it's compatible or not.
They're taking that out, Jimmy, is what they're doing. We had very little teeth. Now we have zero to do anything.
So
that's what I don't agree with. I mean, I don't.
Well, let me ask the question. If there's a neighborhood or community that have maybe a trailer home or a siding home, bound siding, and one is destroyed by storm or fire, and they want to build back, but they want to build back with brick, would they be permitted to do that or not?
My understanding of the interpretation of the ordinance, if you had in your example, a neighborhood of siding homes and one was destroyed, they wanted to build a brick home would not be compatible, and the city would have to decline that building permit and not let them build it. The issue that really arises from this is a very subjective standard, and you could write 500 pages of regulations on what's compatible and not compatible, and still at the end of the day it requires somebody to make a decision.
That's my point. I mean, who's going to make those decisions? And that's what I'm saying. I just don't. I mean, it's so objective. Who's going to make that?
One of the points I wanted to bring up too is this was a concern of the Architectural Committee and also of the Planning Commission members, that there are neighborhoods where they would like to have more restrictive rules, even though this ordinance may not apply to them. And Mr. Bill can speak a little bit more to it, but there is a process. If there was a neighborhood that had let their homeowner association expire, there is a process they can request that they be designated as I think the term is special zoning district, or create an overlay for themselves that is more restrictive than maybe the city ordinance is. So there is a process that allows neighborhoods in those parts of towns to request stricter standards if they so wish.
Has this been a problem in the past?
Councilwoman, we asked that question many times throughout the process, and essentially, other than the one issue that Mr. McCord's referencing in BZA, best I can tell, problem that one
is the area grows.
Well,
You people know parts of the country, that's why I say I hate to see us do this. I really do.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the recommendation that's made to the Planning Commission and then on to City Council is that, creating a subjective standard for compatibility is a task that creates probably more problems than it solves, and that becomes the question is essentially if we have a compatibility standard for the city for adjacent buildings, you would almost have to hire someone to write the rules and regulations and review every single building permit that came across to make a determination of whether it was or wasn't compatible, and it could be a real mess.
What if we've got a BZA committee? What if we had a committee? Could we do that legally?
Susan?
Is the attorney there?
Like a public board?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the BZA does. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What is your exact question?
Do what?
Tell me your exact question.
Could we have a committee set up like the BZA board or something like that?
Well, it couldn't be like the BZA board because the BZA gets its powers from state law. But I suppose you could have some type of a committee within planning that would report to the planning department. We would need to research that.
I mean, that's the thing, and I know it's a lot of work, and I know, Bill and them, they talk about how much work it is, but I just think it's going to be more and more of a problem, not just that one issue that popped up a few months ago, but I think it's going to be more and more of an issue as it comes up. And as y'all know, it's hard to get everybody. You've got to get, I forgot how many % to do a homeowner association to get it started. in a subdivision. So, I mean, that, you know, if we could do some research on that, I'd like to see us defer this for a little bit to see if we could do some research on that.
So is that a motion, Craig, to defer it?
Yes.
I'll second it.
Motion been made, proper second to defer this. How long you gonna defer it to, Craig?
Well, I mean, we can defer it till the next committee meeting and see what they've come up with, and see if that is feasible, see if it's something that we can do.
Any other discussion on it?
I'd like to say something.
Mayor?
I mean, I think you're asking the committee to go ahead and to go back and do what they've already done for several months. And I don't think they're going to come up with anything different. You know, one, I'd say this is a good, let your HOA covenant expire. So, go ahead.
No, I'm not talking about them go back and research. I'm talking about form a committee, maybe within the planning department or planning commission, to determine, to when these people come up, to determine if this is compatible or not.
Well, and then and that plays into the other thing that I was going to say is realize that every year in the legislature, there has been, or, you know, the years that I've been here, that there's been legislation challenging a municipality's ability to weigh in on architectural standards. So that could conceivably, I mean, you know.
That's why I want her to look at it. I mean, if we can, we can.
Well,
But that's
I
why
mean, we can at this point. I'm just saying that really gives the anti-people of the state more fuel for their proposed legislation. And then the final thing that I was going to say related to that, if I can remember it, is that this does not take away all of the oversight that the city has, because, you know, people do still have to get permits and there are still size requirements. This just takes that subjective judgment out of our hands, because, you know, I agree with what Mr. Overton said. It's very difficult for the city to, you know, act as kind of an HOA for the areas of the city that don't have it. And I mean, in reality, there are some areas that are going to have very minimal requirements if you were to look at this standard at a time where they may be facing you know, facing some reinvestment in their communities. And then I could see cases where it actually negatively impacts that reinvestment. And then you have other cases where, I mean, it would be a good thing, I think, for the neighbors, but how equal is it across our community? So those are my comments on this.
Okay.
Anybody else want to comment before we vote on it to defer it?
Councilman Overman, I just want to mention that an architectural review committee could be created, or subcommittee, I guess, to look at all building permits that come in, and most of these contesting are in these older districts. But you know, we've had some difficulty, and I know the mayor will agree, of finding people to even sit on the boards that we do have, and trying to find qualified people who are willing to sit on there. And this can be a monumental task, because there are a lot of building permits that would have to be reviewed that are not in a master plan community or a community with covenants and restrictions. It could be done, or the city could, as Mr. Harris had mentioned, create an overlay zone for certain neighborhoods or certain subdivisions, I guess, in the city, where they would write different architectural requirements for those particular neighborhoods. I don't know that that's maybe fair, but that certainly is something we could explore doing. So just like you'd have an overlay zone for downtown or an industrial area or so forth, or airport overlay zone, which we have in our code, you could create an architectural design standard overlay zone, but you'd have to select which neighborhoods or subdivisions or some geographical area that it would apply to.
Well, and I don't think you'd want to do that without it being the desire of said neighborhoods or whatever. I mean, I can see where that could get very contentious, but I totally agree with what you say on the burden of the work. And I don't see anybody willing to do that. And what it would take is you as a department to kind of manage that also seems very challenging to me.
I don't know that you're interested in looking at it today, but I do have some photographs that we took of homes located in the R20 district in several places in town, which have a variety of accessory structures that were put up. This case kind of developed from an accessory structure that was being built, but the way the code is written, it both previously and as proposed, is that it would apply to any structure, any new structure on a vacant lot or replacement structure, and accessory structures that are part of that lot as well.
Well, I really appreciate the work that's been done on this, but I'm telling you, this just scares me. I just think I don't know. That's just me personally. Anybody else got any comments? Ms. Kittredge, you call the roll, please, to defer it.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Kittredge. Item number 2, Mr. McCoy.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Okay, this next
We
request.
can't right now,
No,
but we
no.
could a while ago when they shared stuff, but
Not now.
Councilman Overton, were we going to move number 10 up?
yeah, we're moving it between 2 and 3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you can see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, sorry about that. This next item is a request for rezoning of about a 47-acre parcel of land. It's located on the east side of Greenlee Boulevard, between Greenlee Boulevard and the west side of the Volunteer State Community College campus. It is located adjacent to properties that are zoned MRO, PUD. The college campus is still zoned residential, R20, and the property to the north is zoned Special District Transit Ready Development, which is all part of the Greensboro Village Plan Unit development. This property is kind of a triangle shaped, and it doesn't extend all the way down to Nashville Pike. There's still a strip of land along Nashville Pike that's not part of this rezoning, but it goes all the way up north to Enterprise Drive. The applicants are requesting a change from MRO PUD zoning, which has a master plan approved for it for a very large shopping center. And that shopping center on the SP property to the north of it was depicted on this screen here as you can see back where it says Highway 31 Nashville Pike. It was to be over 1 million square foot large regional shopping center, your typical big box shopping center, strip center type thing. And I would equate it probably with the Glenbrook Center that's over in Hendersonville, is what they kind of envisioned. Obviously, the markets have changed quite a bit. They don't build big boxes anymore. As a matter of fact, they're closing a lot of them down because of the changes in retail and how that's operating. So the applicant would like to have a consideration of change the zoning on this portion of the property they own to match the zoning on property that they already have established zoning that's located south of the railroad track and to the west of the Gap warehouse buildings. And that's depicted in this the drawing pattern that you see here in the foreground of this project here. This is what they call transit ready development, and it's a kind of a mixed use type product that you might be familiar with in some places in Nashville. If you're familiar with Lennox Village on Nolensville Road on the south side of Nashville, it would be very similar to that type of product. There's a lot of this developing on Charlotte Avenue, west of downtown, and in the Germantown area to some degree, north of downtown in Nashville, and even starting to develop on the east side of Nashville, out East Main Street, Gallatin Avenue. So their request is to essentially rezone this from a big strip center with large parking lot to a mixed-use development. So as I mentioned before, currently the the transit-ready development is on the property or is assigned to the property to the north is a very form-based type code with buildings that would be built up closer to the street, very walkable community. It would be interspersed with a variety of small neighborhood parks and interconnected with other properties adjacent to it, with the exception, of course, of the CSX Railroad, which is a kind of a barrier to movement to and from the north, except for Greenlee Boulevard. So what it does is it provides that 47 additional acres of that similar development pattern. Here is a sketch, which is part of their proposal for the village center portion of it. The village center is actually already approved, and it's located a little bit north of the intersection of Enterprise Drive along Greenlee Boulevard. So all of this property right now is bean fields and cornfields. It just hasn't been developed yet, but it's moving in that direction. The next slide is a kind of a step down in density or intensity. What you would get are more or less your 2- and 3-story townhome type, and there would be some apartment units included within this, and or single family homes. And then as you get further along, you get, excuse me, went too fast. You could get some single family homes, some attached row homes, and here's some typical photographs that would show the pattern that would be developed in this new area. Again, for the bulk of the property that already has the transit-ready development, it's just extending it to the south a little bit. There's a variety of bulk standards that are described and the types of uses that would be permitted in each of the sections of the development. Again, for the most part, it's residential on upper floors, not exclusively. You could have some residential on lower floors, but also retail, restaurants, offices, and so forth, primarily on the second floor. So what they're proposing is as part of their amended master plan, of course, they're keeping the transit-ready development on the existing property, and this southerly portion that they want to own and rezone would be a part of their phase 3, so to be the later part of their development. Again, just another sketch there. It's a possibility that they would tie the roadway system into the community college and link that to the community college, as well as providing additional links to Greenlee Boulevard at Merrill Extension, which would connect Merrill Drive to the college, as well as a private access easement that will access out to Highway 31 upon development of that property that's fronts on Highway 31. This shows you generally with the landscaping and natural areas that would be left and the park system that would be located throughout there. Of course, most of you are aware there's a creek that runs through it, and your creek buffers that would be applied, and they would retain that area as well for natural purposes. The Planning Commission did review this request and recommends approval of this zoning change to SP Transit Ready Development and the Master Development Plan Amendment.
I have a question.
Ms. Love?
Bill, if we approve this rezoning, are we essentially saying it would be all right for them to put in apartment buildings?
It could be apartments. It's, again, it's multifamily. The multifamily could be condominiums. We don't regulate housing by form of ownership. Y'all may have heard of a situation over in Hendersonville here recently where Durham Farms, the developer, owns a large number of homes over there, and they are renting those homes out to people who would like that rental option as opposed to purchase option. Some of the residents don't like that, but that is, you're not changing the use simply because of the form of ownership. So it's possible, yes, that some of these could be rental.
We're just opening it up for anything then?
It would be form-based code, so the design of the structures would be, again, more of your typical urbanized type development. And again, and Susan, you might want to mention this, we can't dictate the form of ownership.
I think she's talking about apartments, not rental houses, apartments.
Right.
Right.
We're talking
Whether
about
it's a
apartments.
condominium or it's rented, a condominium that's rented, we don't have.
We're not talking about that. We're talking about apartment complexes.
Right, this is, well, if it's a complex, it's not your typical garden complex like you would have across the street. That's not the design pattern that you would have.
And would it have to come back to us before they developed anything on this property?
It would come back to you if there was a significant change. This is a preliminary master development plan, so this is at the zoning stage. The next stage, if they were to develop any portion of this property, even including the portion that's already developed, unless they were going to create a significant change in their proposal, then they would just go to the planning commission as a final master development plan.
Would a significant change be an apartment complex?
Not necessarily.
So,
Again, these buildings here that they're proposing to build, say something like this, if that's a condominium, that could be a condominium type building. Whether it's a condominium or if it's an apartment in that building, it's irrelevant. We're talking multifamily is the use, not form of ownership.
Any other questions for Mr. McCord?
it sounds like we're giving the people carte blanche to do whatever.
I think we need to describe.
Well,
Steve, we can't hear you. What'd you say?
We need to describe what a significant change would be here.
I think your might not be on.
And I know also, unless it's a major change to the plan, it wouldn't come back to us. It would just be at planning commission. But if it's a major change, I think then it would come to us again. And I don't think we'd have any more to say about it after this.
Bill, do you know what they're wanting to do with the property? Do you have any idea?
no, other than develop this southerly portion similar to the product that they've already got approved on the northerly portion.
What I was saying, I think we need a description of significant change for this project.
Yeah, that's described in Article 15 of the code. Generally, that means an increase in the height of buildings, the bulk of buildings. In relation to square footage, it would be a greater square footage than this form-based code would provide for. So if they wanted to exceed, for example, in this section of this is called the village center. This would not be the village center. Let's call it, okay, this area here, which is the village area. If these buildings wanted to go above 4 stories, they wanted to put a 5-story, 6-story building, they'd have to come back, and the planning commission would then evaluate that and determine whether it was a major or minor amendment. So and they got maximum and minimum building heights of 14 foot a minimum. That's obviously a 1-story building. So they got some variety of range. Again, this is a form-based code. This is a traditional neighborhood development, but it is denser than your typical suburban development pattern, which most of us have grown up with over the years.
So we would be approving a 4-story building now if we pass this.
In this pattern, yes. On the primary and secondary street, on the corner lots would be these potentially 4-story buildings. It could be less.
Would rather it be rezoned in a different way so that they're not just receiving permission to build anything they want on there. You know, I'm happy for them to make money and build things, but we're giving up a lot of our, a lot, I don't know what the word would be. We're giving up a lot of control, I guess.
Again, I want to emphasize that what you have there now is a large shopping center surrounded by a parking lot. And that, again, is not viable economic development in this day and age. These would be types of development that would share trips. So you would have more walkability in an environment like this. You'd walk down from your condominium down to the neighborhood store, restaurant, things like that, or even to your office. So
Bill,
if we even have offices in the future.
Bill, I'm just talking out loud, but I think if you're talking about building retail on the bottom and building some units on top, and they're all over Nashville like this. I mean, it's a great product, but I think what scared everybody is when you said they can go in there on all this property and build an apartment complex, and I think that's what everybody's scared about.
Yeah, and then that goes back to the form of ownership, and perhaps the applicant is available. He might be able to present their position on it.
Mayor.
Well, I may be hearing this wrong, but Mr. McCord, I think you're talking about the form of ownership. I think the council members are questioning, does this then entitle them to scrap this form of development and switch it with something that's a more typical complex like that across the street? I think that's what the
I think that's what the concern is.
That's part of it, yeah.
Well, that would go to the planning commission. And again, this is a very specific plan. You see the design of the structures here and the layout on the properties. This is not your garden apartment complex. So ultimately the planning commission would make a determination whether it would be a major or minor amendment. If it's a major amendment, mean a significant change into the design and the patterns that are approved, or if this is approved, they would make that determination. And if they felt that it was a major amendment, then they would then elevate it to the council for review as well, and for a new PMDP.
But you say it's very specific, but at the same time, you're saying that we don't really know exactly what they're going to put there. It could be apartment complexes, maybe not.
Let me use the term multifamily residential. That is what it would be. Much of it would be multifamily residential attached units, and this is the lower intensity village edge type of development as opposed to the regular village types of units here. Again, Susan might want to address the form of ownership. The structures would look, it's what we're looking at, and that's what the whole form-based code is about. It's the look of the structures, not whether somebody happens to own it or rent it.
And Bill, you might want to clarify that this zoning exists.
It exists over the bulk of the property to the north already. Yeah, let me get that map up here.
And Mr. McCoy, while you looking for that, is any of that land, especially on the west side, in a flood zone?
There is a little bit of it, but those areas that are in a flood zone are shown in green, and they would be left as open space. It's part of that creek that runs up through there. So they wouldn't be building in those areas other than maybe parking.
What's the will of the body?
I would prefer to see another type of zoning.
Mr. Hayes?
How much green space will be with this, you know, in acres?
Let's see here.
It's still got to go through 2 readings, right?
It would have to go through 2 readings, yes.
Yeah.
I don't see that on here, but it just by looking at this, it looks like it's close to a quarter of it.
I'll make a motion to send it on, and then we can get some of these questions answered at least, within the next month and a half before it goes to 2nd reading.
Second.
Because I'd like know how much green space is there too, and then, a little clarification on apartments, stuff like that, so.
Okay.
I'd like to hear more about more about this.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know if the applicant is online or not and available to make a presentation to you himself, but you may have a lot of questions that they're more capable of answering.
Is the applicant online?
And if not, maybe we can get him to come for the next committee meeting or something like that, or council meeting.
Is the applicant online? Jeff?
I don't think so.
Okay.
What's the applicant's name?
Los and Associates, I'm not sure who their representative would be.
Well, Bill, can you set that up to where they can at least get online with us or something next time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I wanted to make sure the motion I heard was to move it to council, and then we'll also have it at the next council committee meeting. Is that?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's what you heard, that's correct.
Okay.
So motion's been properly made. Any other discussion?
I second it.
Any other discussion? Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp. Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilman Fan.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Love.
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes,
6 ayes, 0 nays.
thank you. We'll move it on, and then we'll also ask them to be on our next committee meeting as well. Item number 10, Mr. Alexander.
Thank you, Mr. Overton. This is, in regards to, new community civic center, Clearview Park. I formed a committee, and we've been working on this, I guess, maybe a year and a half, looking at different structures and buildings that we felt that would be compatible for the Clearview Park area. Also be feasible in cost for that area. Ms. Rachel, do you have some information about the price and the cost of that building that the council member have in their package?
The building that you have in your package that was sent out, that building cost $9,221,400 when it was built in 2018.
And the other building that the guy was talking about reducing was how much?
There was another one built at the same time that did not have the pool facility, but was basically the same structure that was diagrammed in your packet. That, without the pool, cost $7,643,350. And these are numbers from the architect that developed this plan.
And that was back in 18?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. So what I'm hoping we could do, since we're gonna float a bond, is to put something in there to indicate that we are gonna build some kind of structure there. And I also would like to look through the proposed bond project that we have now. There's some money that I feel that maybe could go toward there, but that's, you know, up to the council when we get to that point. But I would like to suggest that we put something in there for that project.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Alexander on item number 10? If not, we'll move on. Item number 3. Rachel Nichols.
Yes, sir. Included in your packet are 2 resolutions for the bond issue that we're proposing. One is the initial resolution, which gives the public notice that the city intends to borrow. Then the second resolution is the more legal, technical form for the bond that we would like to issue. Right now, it's at $15 million par value, based on the list of projects that you have before you that the mayor's recommended or prioritized for this issue.
We're just going to be talking about the action, just having the bond, not discussing what we're really going to be using it for, right? At this time?
The resolution before you tonight is just authorizing the bond issue.
And do we have to put an amount on there as well?
We do have to put in an amount, but we do not have to get specific on the individual projects and the individual project amounts. The wording in the bonds are usually flexible enough that in case one project comes in higher and another project comes in lower, you wouldn't have to come back and reapprove the bond resolutions if you changed how the money was moved between those two projects.
But
So,
if you add money to it, you'd have to change it, but you wouldn't have to change the total overall cost, right? Or bond amount.
well, once we set the bond amount,
Right.
that's what we would issue.
Right. Okay.
And at the present, the 15 million, what percentage of that, you know, we spend up to what, a certain percentage? What would our cost be, our payment rather would be at this point, at 15 million?
We won't know exactly because we won't know our interest rate, but I think Rachel's doing some figuring.
Okay.
And I did want to share with this council too, just I'll interject while she's doing her figuring. We had talked about the courthouse, and I'm fairly comfortable we're supposed to be getting an agreement from the county shortly. It is, as I told you all, it should be. And then the other thing was an estimate on the city hall renovations and updates, and I can share that with you this evening as well. I just got it this afternoon, so I'm happy to share it with you if you'd like to see that too.
And Mayor, about the Caldwell Park, is that something that we need to do at this time?
I think that is something that a lot of our community would feel is a big priority. It is an entrance to our community. I know engineering's been working on it for 7 years or so. I know concerns about it have been coming to my attention for 20 years or so. And I think that I think we're coming to a place where we're going to have some very willing partners with the reclamation of that project, and we've put together the study and ready to present to the Army Corps of Engineers and work with our legislators to see if we can make this happen.
And plus that is in my district, and we have 0 over there right now. So I don't want to hear anything about anything else. So
I understand, but that Caldwell Park does not belong to the city; it belongs to the Corps of Engineers.
Well, all of the lake accesses in the city of Gallatin do, but you know, we have the ability to utilize them and make them use them as enhancement to our city.
Mm-hmm.
And Mayor, I know we can talk about this at a later time, but of course, the project on Lot 4, as far as the bridge and the greenway there on Lot 4, and I know once we set this amount, we can talk about how we're going to fund it, but is in your consideration, is this first phase of this in this project?
I don't know that it is, because we don't actually, I don't think I have a firm estimate from engineering on what that cost would be for that first phase. I did have the brief conversation with Nick and Zach about, instead of widening the road bridge for pedestrian access, adding a separate pedestrian access. And while they said that could be done, we're probably going to need to build the bridge in 10 years anyway. So I don't see any reason to do dual work there. So I'm fully supportive of including that in here, especially since there did seem to be some willingness from this council to go beyond. Remember too, that $2.2 million that we are reimbursing ourselves allows us some flexibility for opportunities that do present themselves that we all agree makes very good, that make good sense for our community. I am very concerned about a plan for City Hall renovations. We're going to have to address that in the near future. I'm scared that the mechanicals will begin to fail, and you hate to go in and replace mechanicals and then a few years later actually do the renovations they're going to be demanded of this building. I think the smart thing probably is to make a plan for retrofitting this building with a new design and replacing mechanicals and updating it so that it has good use for the next 50, maybe 100 years.
Lance Wagner, do you have some figures from engineering on what it would cost us for that end phase where the bridge is on Lot 4?
Hey guys, exact figures, no. We've got some of the old figures worked up, going back from 2009, or restudied back in 2017. So if we're looking at a greenway potentially from the park up to, say, that was the Bell Road area. That's in the ballpark of $2 million. And that does not include a bridge, and that just includes a walkway or incorporating.
So even if we shorten it back up to where the subdivision is and just do the bridge in the first phase of it back to the park, of course, that'd take a lot off, because that's a good ways from there to Bell Road. But, you know, I just suggested we do the bridge and back to Triple Creek out to that first access there where the subdivision is. What's the name of that road where I'm talking?
Smoky Mountain Trail, or?
The one right from the first lake, from the second lake access in the
Fredericksburg.
Yeah, Fredericksburg, from Fredericksburg to the park. So if we shorten it up and do that phase from there and not go all the way to Bell Road right now, I mean, I'm good with that. I just think we got to get started on this so that when all this other property out there sells, we can actually get the developers to build it, not us. And that's what we need to do. It makes sense. So, but if you guys will look at that and get with Nick and look at it and see what he thinks the bridge and go up to Fredericksburg back to the entrance of the park. I mean, that's, you know, I'm okay with that.
We'll work up some estimates and give us some people on it.
Okay.
I do imagine it would, just from general talks with Nick, that bridge alone would be close to $1 million. So
okay,
we're still probably in that 2 million ballpark.
Right. So if we cut it back, maybe that $1 million we can save and just do it on the bridge and not as far as up to Bell Road. But Mayor, what was the City Hall renovation? You was going to talk about that as well?
Well, did you want, Ms. Nichols is back with us. Do you want to let her go ahead and talk
Sure.
about the cost of the
Absolutely.
debt?
I am so sorry about that. I lost my connection.
Good.
Where were we, and what do I need to answer next?
Mr. Alexander was just asking us what percentage and what it cost us for, you know, to increase the percentage.
Yeah, you know, if we want to put some more money in for the bond, I mean, as of right now, what are we paying compared to, say, if we add another 5 million to it?
The proposal that we received, I didn't put that in this week's packet, I apologize, but it was in last committee meeting's packet. The pricing that we anticipate, we will pay roughly $900,000 a year in annual debt service payment for the $15 million bond. If we were to move it to a $20 million bond, we anticipate the annual debt service payment will cost a little over $1.1 million per year. Not quite $300,000 a year to add the additional $5 million if you chose to do that.
Okay. So Mayor, do you plan putting anything in the bond at this time for Clearview Park?
Well, when I had, you know, because I didn't know anything about your committee or what you all were discussing, but, you know, we had talked a long time ago about rebuilding that center that was over there. And I was thinking that that is a project that needs to be addressed. And so between the 2.2 million that we're reimbursing and the 400,000 in parks, we were talking at the time about it being a $200,000 project. I was thinking a $300,000 project that could even go up more than that. But I don't know. I don't see any way that we could go to those many millions with the list of priorities that are already on this list. So yeah, I mean, I see us doing something with the existing building, but not building another civic center so close to the existing one.
Would be nice to have something over in Clearview Park that would be maybe not, yeah, I agree, maybe not such a big thing like the Civic Center, but it would be nice to have, for them to have a community center.
Yeah, we definitely need a community center. I mean, you know, like Mr. Hay was saying, he's been waiting 20-some years for the Carwell Park to be done. I thought all this time that I didn't know that belonged to the city. I thought the Corps engineer. But
I didn't say I've been waiting on the Caldwell Park to be done. I've been waiting on a park, period.
Oh, a park. Okay,
A dog park, anything. We got land donated to us years ago. We don't have ball fields. We don't have anything.
I understand.
And I'm not really complaining about that. I don't have a civic center a mile with where I live or my district.
Okay.
We spent millions and millions and millions of dollars on.
I apologize. I misunderstood you, Mr. Hayes. I apologize.
No, but I'm just saying that it's too close to spend that much money when you've got it, when it's a mile an hour. We're fixing to build a brand new road over the railroad tracks with bike lanes on it, everything.
Well,
Easy access.
That's the whole problem. Everything is growing but Clearview Park. We've been waiting for years. We got inner city kids don't have transportation to get over to the city center. And when they go, walk. Would you want your kids walking across the railroad track and walking over the viaduct, taking a chance of hitting by a car? No, you would not.
Did you not hear what I said? They're fixing to build a brand new road over that, a brand new bridge.
They still got to walk. We need a center in Clearview Park in the heart of the district for the inner city kids to go to.
Guys, we're not
When we were growing up, we used to walk miles.
Well,
guys,
when I was a baby, I used to crawl, but I'm not a baby no more. I'm walking now.
Hang on, guys. We got to decide how much we're going to put in this bond, and then we can talk about the logistics of it and what are we going to spend with it. But right now, we need to move on and talk about how much we're going to actually issue in the bond, and then we can get down to the nitty gritty and change some things around a little bit and decide how we're going to spend it. But right now, we need to decide how much we're going to do in this bond. And of course, we can, you know, because we put 20 million in there, don't mean we have to get 20 million. So
I thought we said we were doing 15.
15 is what we have. And I do worry about our debt capacity because I think we need to leave the door open for.
I think we should do 20. I mean, we didn't worry about the debt capacity when we bought all that land for $3.some million that we didn't need. We didn't think about it then. The Clearview Park need to have a community center for that district.
Now, I think any preservation of
I do too.
is very important. Councilman Overton, do you want me to share with you the City Hall estimate?
yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, Mr. Henschel, can you allow me to share my screen?
Should be able to, but let me know if you can't.
Okay, uh-oh. I think this is it.
It's working.
I hope it is, because I won't feel silly. Now I need to get to where I can actually see it. Let's see. Yeah, it took away my view of it when I did that. So what are you seeing? Because I can't even navigate it if I can't see.
Such tools.
Yeah, we're seeing like a close-up of your tabs and a very small document by Gresham Smith.
Oh, okay. Then I might be able to do it this way. This might, I can do it this way. So,
There you go. Now we can read it.
this is what you need to see. Can you see now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Okay, so that describes kind of, it's a rough estimate because we asked for it pretty quick. So you're looking at, you know, the cost of getting the services together, the demolition that would have to occur, some waterproofing on the west side of the building, the interior build out, new HVAC, fire protection, which would include the sprinkler system, plumbing replacement, the electrical replacement. That's another big cost for a subtotal of 5.2. The contingency and general contractor fees, that takes it to 6.7.
What all part of City Hall are you talking about, Mayor?
I'm sorry?
What all part of City Hall are we talking
We're
about?
talking about the whole building because you're going to have to become ADA compliant. There's going to have to be changes throughout the building. We're going to have new elevator shaft. Really have to reconfigure all the mechanical, all the electrical, all the plumbing. And then when you're doing that, that's the opportunity to reorganize your space and maximize the use of it. Moving forward.
So you want to do away with the dining room? Is that what you want to do?
I don't know that we have not decided how best it is to allocate space, and that's going to have to be a discussion with this council. I think you all know that I think that the City Hall as a gathering space for the community is a need that really no longer exists in our community because the private sector is filling that so very well. There's also some questions that come to us all the time, whether it's our insurance carrier or our codes department, about the safety of having a kitchen in our basement. We've talked about, could we potentially move council chambers to the basement? could we dual use that space down there as training and council and court? And thereby allowing us to build out the lobby upstairs and the council area upstairs for more offices. The way that office space could be better allocated. Another thing that I'm a proponent of is getting rid of all the little kitchenettes in all the offices in the city and having one central break area for the whole building. So those are my ideas, but we have not fleshed out exactly what makes the most sense, and certainly want the council's weigh in when we get there too. But I'm just trying to plan for the future, because we hear from Lyndon all the time that it's getting really hard to get parts for some of these systems in our building, and we do not want to get into a place where we have to replace something very expensive, which would have been the perfect opportunity to do renovation at that, associated with it.
So you've only got 900,000 in here in this bond for the city hall renovation. So how much you talking about putting in there for the city hall renovation?
I was thinking that we could potentially do another 2 million, maybe 3, and that we would budget in the next coming years for additional money to fully fund that.
You all feel comfortable adding another $5 million to that bond?
I
Not
do.
really.
Looks like we need
We
a
do.
lot.
We need to.
Do we have any projections on the sales tax revenue that we're getting the next year or so?
Well, right now it's looking better than we expected it to, but we can't really determine, what is that? How much of that is because people have gotten additional unemployment? How much of that is due to stimulus checks? I think we really need to settle and identify the fallout. In fact, part of me, as I've contemplated this the last week, has almost made me think we need to, although the interest rates are when they're compelling, that we need to dial back on issuing this large amount of debt and only take care of these essential things. But you hate it when the borrowing is cheap and we know that we have all these projects.
It's not going to be cheaper than it is right now.
I know it's not.
Exactly.
I know it's not,
This is the time
but
to get the money.
we
if
also
you're gonna
have to
get
be ready to move on these things.
Right.
And so that's kind of why I proposed the list that I did. The city hall part, it's going to be a while before we're ready to move on that. Maybe we
So will the 900,000 give you enough money to do your design work or whatever you're going to do on it?
Yes, I think it would, yeah.
I would like to see us add an additional $5 million to the bond. Ms. Nichols said it wouldn't hurt us that bad. It wouldn't affect that bad. And I also would like to see us put Cleveland Park in on this list with the bond this time. And we can designate later on what we're going to spend toward it or not. But it needs to be added to this list when we work this bond.
So some of the other council members, what's the will of the body? We got to make a decision and move on. We got to put something on these figures.
I think we should take the conservative side right now, whatever y'all think that might be.
I do too. I'm with you.
I think while the interest rate is low, I think we ought to add 5 more million to the bond, make it 20, which is not going to raise our payment very much, and also include Cleveland Park in this bond issue at this time. But this is the right time at this price.
Mr. Love and Mr. Camp, I hadn't heard from you guys yet.
I disagree with that. I think I'll leave it at 15 million myself.
I got a question. Our attorney may can answer this. And then, believe me, I'm against taxes, but I think this would be a real shot in the arm to the revenue of the city of Gallatin. Is there any way the city or the county could put a 1 cent per gallon tax on fuel? Fuel's cheaper than it's been in for years.
I do not believe so, but I would need to research that. I'd have to look into state law. I don't know that off the top of my head.
I think that's something we should look at.
I know that fuel taxes are I think the fuel taxes are only supposed to fund roads. And I know that, that's something, I think that state has off the control on that, but I'm gonna defer to you is how.
I wish that y'all would research that, because you have your visitors that are gonna fill up, you have truck drivers that are filling up the county. They would be contributing to our resources while they're using them.
I'll have my office research that issue and get back with you.
Would y'all be more comfortable with adding 2.5 or 3 million?
I wouldn't.
We should. I'd rather have more than not enough, especially with the interest rate the way it is.
I'm just thinking, well, the last time this was brought up, I don't remember who it was on council, but one or two of y'all said we should add more onto it while the rates were low.
I was the one that brought up the rates being low, because it depends on what we're gonna do with it and if we have the funds. Just because the rates are low don't mean we can make the payments. We need, I wanna know what the revenue we think it's gonna be, or if we've got any way of creating more revenue to cover that.
How comfortable do you feel, Ms. Nichols, with, if we raise it to, 17 or 20 million?
That's not my call to make. I'm sorry. As council, you can vote to do whatever the majority would like to do. And if revenues get tight and don't come in like we project, then you as council have to take the action to increase revenues by some source or another. That burden is on you. I'm sorry.
But the bond rate,
I can give you the facts and the figures that a $15 million bond will cost you approximately $900,000 a year for 20 years. A $20 million bond will cost you approximately $1.1 million, $1.2 million for 20 years.
so you're talking about $300,000 more.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I think that's what we need to do.
But I would urge you all to look at the
And
list.
just because we have the money, don't mean we have to spend it. But we need to have it available.
Should be
at this
paying
time.
interest on it.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't understand why you would just borrow it and let it sit there, because we're not gonna earn the interest that we're paying. That'd be just losing.
Well, I mean, all these things we
Yeah, I
have
would
on this
encourage
project, I don't think it would sit there.
I would encourage you all to look at the list of proposed projects, because remember that total was $44 million. And there are a lot of road projects in there, and Firehouse 6 and
Well, I'd like to add Clearview Park to the list.
some other really good other.
Do I need to make it in the form of a motion or what? Oh, I'm sorry, I hadn't heard from Mr. Camp. Go ahead, Mr. Camp, I'm sorry.
Steve, Mr. Camp,
Yes.
your input.
Well, there's a lot of money going to Parks Department. I don't know if we can pull anything there or not, but the $2.2 million to pay ourselves back the land, we've already paid for that land. So why not take that 2.2 million and put it somewhere else instead of putting it back in that other discretionary fund or whatever it was that came out of? Never could ever get an answer on where it came from, and put it toward Clearview Park.
The $2.2 million came out of your general fund balance. You drew that balance down by $2.2 million. This is just putting your balance back up to where it was before the land was purchased.
I was told by your assistant and by you that it was coming from the other designated fund, but I never could find out what the other designated fund was.
It's the fund balance of the general fund, not the rainy day fund that y'all have set aside, but the remaining fund balance for the general fund.
So that's not a designated fund.
It's a terminology conflict that we have anytime y'all start speaking of rainy day fund and fund balance. We try to use that wording to separate the two, but it is just your general fund balance.
And I tend to call it like the rainy day fund and additional reserve funds to kind of differentiate between the two. But as I wanted to mention the 2.2, because we discussed it last week, that there are several projects that I can see us using that 2.2 for, mostly roads. And then potentially with this
Bridge Lot 4.
project. And you all know that I have some other things I would love to do, but I have not included them in here, and there's been a lot of desire for those as well. But so I mean, it's not that the $2.2 million is just going into have no use. I mean, I see us using it for those. I'm just, when I have to designate this out for a bond, that's why I've kind of done the general categories. And that 2.2 essentially gives us that $2.2 million that does not have to go to a designated place at this time at the issuance. So that's why it's staying there.
Well, the people in the 5th District have waited a long time to have something done at Clearview Park. And we have made promises and made promises, but we hadn't done anything. We need to put something. I mean, I don't know, it don't have to be a whole lot, but we need to put something in this bond to designate for Clearview
How come
Park.
y'all got a park and we don't, though, is what I'm
What do you
asking.
mean? What are you saying, y'all?
Hey, let's don't get
In the
this, y'all. Let's don't
5th
get
No,
into this.
I'm understanding the word y'all. What is that supposed to mean?
In the 5th District, 4th District, we don't have a park anywhere, John.
Okay.
We put money over
That's
there
not
all
my
the
fault,
time.
Craig. That's not my fault.
Well, I'm
Okay.
pushing for it now then, okay?
Well, I'm pushing for mine.
Okay.
Well,
But that's fine. You've got one.
Hey, hang on, guys. Mayor.
Thank you. I thought that we had done some decent improvements at Clearview. That
Many years since I've been on this council, we
I
have.
thought we had, done a new playground. We built that outdoor structure. I thought we did the track. We did the basketball courts. And the other question that I would have kind of relevant to what's going on in the 5th District is about the Shalom Zone and that building and the interior of it. Because there's a gym in there that I wasn't here. I wasn't mayor and I wasn't on the council at the time, but I remember when that came before you all and there was the discussion about the city gave a lot of money to support that project, and it's supposed to act as a community center, and it's 100 yards from
We give $500,000 to them and hopefully,
Nothing has never been done there. And you're talking about the improvement at Clearview Park. Yes, we got swings, slides, we got new basketball goals and stuff over there. But do you realize when those kids come over there to use that park, they do not have access to the clubhouse. They cannot go in there and use the bathroom. They can't go in there and drink water. They can come over and play, but if they gotta have water or use the bathroom, they gotta go home and come back to the park.
Yeah, that's good. I agree with you on that. I said bathrooms and water.
How is that accessible to the kids in that district?
I've got a question. If the council gave $500,000 over there and Councilman Alexander says nothing's been done, what happened to that money?
Good
To
question.
the Shalom Zone, Linda.
Good question.
It went into the Shalom Zone. $500,000 went to the Shalom Zone when they renovated it, and when they,
Is that the Union High School?
Yes, that's
building?
correct. Yes, that's correct. But they did not finish the gym, and the gym was going to be finished at one time, and then they backed out and didn't finish the gym part of it. It's just sitting there doing nothing.
I would think that we would want to have a discussion with Shalom Zone and see what the opportunity is there, rather than. I mean, there is a great building that's had a ton of work done to it. And I agree that the community center that it exists there is not sufficient. But I would also say that that is the only park that does have a community center. So there's that. And I am supportive of rebuilding that building for, essentially the purpose that it's there for now. But the whole civic center thing I find very challenging.
No, I don't know why you keep calling it a civic center. It's a community center. There's a huge difference.
Oh, you called it a community civic center when you introduced it. I'm sorry.
Community center. It's on your. It should be on your paper.
Well, you said
John,
civic
when you first said it, you said civic center, community center. So that's
Okay.
Yeah.
What do we have on our paper? Discuss a new community center for Clearview Park.
Yeah. So
we need
I
to
just
put
want a
something.
park.
We need to put something in for Clearview Park.
I just want a park.
We need to clarify what we're gonna call a civic center and what we're gonna call a community center.
It's a community center for inner city kids. I don't know where the civic center. That's not. We have a city over there. I'm talking about an inner city community center for kids.
John D., I haven't seen what the improvements are over there to Shalom Zone, but if there was more money added there, would that be sufficient?
Not really. No, because that school is old and dilapidated. That's the reason why when the civic center was built, they didn't use the old Gallatin High School when they built a new one because the building was too old, too dilapidated. You'd had to put a lot, the money that we put in to the old Union High School to fix that up, we could put a nice small structure right there on that football field would be ideal for that center.
And the Civic Center is less than a mile away or a mile and a half away.
Again, Mr. Hayes, it's difficult for the kids to get over to it. Every time those kids walk by my house on Athens Street, going across that viaduct to the center, I'm praying to God to protect those kids and take those kids. Those are not your kids walking there, so it don't matter to you, but it matters to me because there's no reason why we can't put some kind of nice building there at Clearview Park. I mean, we're spending money on everything else.
Except the park in my district.
Well, that's your problem, Mr. Hayes, that you hadn't brought it up.
No, I brought it up.
I made a plan. I've worked on this plan for quite some time, and we need something at Clearview Park in a way of a civic, not a civic center, but a community center for our inner city kids. And we need to float it at this time in the bond while the interest rates are low. There's a lot of things on this list.
Hey guys, let's get back on schedule. Let's decide how much money we're gonna put in this bond, and then we can get down to the nitty gritty of what's gonna be in it. But let's decide what we're gonna do in this bond. Somebody needs to make a motion and let's move on.
I make a motion that we do 20 million.
Is there a second on the 20 million?
Seconded.
Motion been made and properly second on 20 million. Is there any discussion on the 20 million?
Just other than the projects that we have listed, just make sure we put Clearview Park on there to be a part of this all these projects.
Is there any more discussion on the 20 million?
We're not deciding right now what the projects are though, just the money.
Right.
So do I understand, Ms. Love, you're agreeing to add $5 million to the bond proposal?
That's what she did. Yeah, that's her motion.
I'm worried about it, but there seems like there's quite a few things that might be needed. I am worried about it though.
I'm worried about the $15 million budget. We don't know what the economy's going to bring after this election. I'm not for or against any projects that's been mentioned tonight, but we need to know where the money's going to come from.
I think we'd all love to do all of them, but we have to.
Not really. Not really. It's not feasible to do all of them. We know that.
I think
let's prioritize and do what we need to do.
We would all love to be able to do all of the things on the list, but that's not.
I got another question. The existing Civic Center sells memberships, right?
Yes.
I know when I go over there, I pay per visit. Do we have any, Mr. Brown may be on here, any information on how much money they're taking in now and what portion of it pays for the overhead for the Civic Center?
David, do you want to answer that question, or Rachel? Either one can, but David, I know David's on here. I see his number down there.
His number's on here. He's still muted though. I know that he and I had the discussion this week that they've taken a huge hit this year.
Yeah, but that's but on a normal year.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they took a big hit this year, Steve, but on
Does anybody remember close to what it was taking in? How much of the overhead was it paying the membership dues?
Rachel, can you answer that for us?
The Civic Center never covers all of its cost.
It's kind of like a golf course. It's like a community thing.
I think the golf course comes close to breaking even a lot of times now. So
they do. The Civic Center is usually around 50 to 60% revenue of their cost. And that's not including any depreciation expense.
anything that we need to do new like that, I think we should have memberships pre-sold a certain amount to know that they're going to be used, and we'll have some income coming from it.
I call for the question.
Question been called for. There's no debate on that. Do I have to have a second on that, Susan?
Vote on calling for the question.
No, he's calling for the question.
Yeah, he is called for the question. So, Ms. Kittrell, call the roll. This is to put $20 million on the bond.
Vice Mayor Camp, Vice Mayor Camp,
I don't know where he went to. Let's give him a minute.
I went to the restroom.
I'll go on and come back to him. Give him a minute, okay? Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Abstain at this time.
okay? Councilman Hayes,
No.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton,
I'm abstaining at this time.
and Councilman Camp, or Vice Mayor Camp.
Check.
How long you want me to wait?
We'll wait just a minute. Change mine at this time to a no. And that's just cause information purposes only. We don't have enough information on it. Let's move on. What's the vote total?
We have 2 yeses, 2 nos, and 1 abstention.
Okay, let's try this again then. It failed. Is there another motion?
I move that we accept the bond for the,
Anything in there between or whatever? What is it?
I'll
well,
make a motion, we do it for 15 million.
Is there a second?
was that what was on the,
Yeah.
15 million even?
I ask a question here.
Fails for lack of second. Let's try it again. Let's
Let's
do,
go to 17 million.
Jimmy,
I'll second that. Yes, Steve.
I got a question here.
Okay.
This may be a finance question. Rather than put a number on it, is there any way the city can get a line of credit?
No. You want
We
to,
want to float the bond with the interest rate the way it is.
I think your line of credit, Steve, was gonna go, it'd be an adjustable rate on it probably.
Probably would.
So
Let's
you
go.
don't wanna do that with the bond. So
Let's go to 17 million.
there's a motion made for 17 million. Is there any discussion on 17?
I need to know who made the motion in the second, please.
John D. made the
I
motion.
made the motion. Mr. Overton made the
I
second.
made the second.
Okay, 17 million, all righty.
If no other questions, Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp, it's not there. Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Abstain.
Councilman Hayes,
No.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
Still no Mr. Camp, so we have 3 yeses, 1 no, and 1 abstention.
Hey,
So,
Councilman Overton,
yes,
let me ask you a question. A minute ago when we voted,
yes.
it was 2-2 tie.
It was
How
what?
did you, it was a 2-2 tie. How'd you determine that that was a no?
I thought I changed mine to a no.
You did.
Okay.
That made it 2-2 and 1 abstention and 4, 5. How many of us?
5.
What was the vote, Connie, on that first one, on the 20 million?
2 yeses, 2 nos, and 1 abstention.
Okay, that's a tie.
Okay,
So why did we not have to, didn't the mayor have to break the tie?
That was on the 20 million that we didn't do. We
So-
voted on the 17 million.
so the mayor can vote on it if she wants to.
No, we messed up. Jimmy messed up on that because it did not get defeated. It was tied. So we have to go back.
Okay, let's go back and do it, and let's get it, and the mayor's gonna defeat it, and then we're just gonna do this other one that we're back on now.
Well, I want to make sure. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Mayor, would you like to vote on the last motion for 20 million?
I love how you tell me how I'm going to vote. No, I'm
Would
just.
you like to vote on that, Mayor?
I think I was clear that I'm very fearful of 20 million. I can't support that. So my vote would actually be a no. And I'm not sure, just to be clear, I'm not sure I can be supportive of the 17 million depending on how this plays out as it goes to approval at the council. So.
Okay. So now we got a motion on the floor for 17 million.
Very
We
voted.
already voted on it.
We hadn't voted on the 7. Have we voted on the 17? Ms.
Yes,
Kittrell, what was the
3-1 and
vote on
1
that,
abstain.
Ms. Kittrell?
Yes, we voted on the 17 with 3 yeses and 1 abstention and 1 no.
Okay. So that motion passed for the 17.
That's good.
Moving on.
So let's move on to item number 4, Zach Wilkinson.
Yes, sir. This resolution is to allow for the application for a grant through the Volkswagen diesel settlement. The grant will cover the replacement of 3 large trucks. It's a 75-25% grant. The city would be on the hook for the 25% portion. For 2 of the trucks, the city's match portion would come out of the environmental services fund, which is already, that money's already there. And then for the 3rd truck, which would be in the amount of around 25,000, the match portion would have to be appropriated if we were awarded the grant. So this resolution just allows for.
So I got one question, Zach. Is this the ones that we've been waiting on for years and years to get? Is that the same grant?
No, sir. It's very similar in the structure, where they want you to destroy an existing vehicle and replace it with a new one.
Right.
We actually have a meeting tomorrow over those funds for those that were previously awarded. But those funds are not going. They indicated they're not going to allow those funds to go towards vehicle replacements, but they might potentially let us use them on sidewalk projects or some other CMAQ project. So this is a separate grant.
We do have a meeting about the other tomorrow, which we're excited about.
What's the city matching on this one?
Overall, the city match would be up to 125,000. 100 of that is already in the environmental services fund. So it would not come out of the general fund, but 25 of that, if we were awarded the grant, would cover or would have to be appropriated out of the general fund.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Mr. Brown, did you have your hand up wanting to say something? You're muted, David.
No, I don't have to say.
Okay. Motion has been made, properly seconded. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp. He's not here. Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilman Fan.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Love.
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Mayor, item number 5.
Yes, this is a resolution to appoint Robert Montgomery and Brian Matt Harris to the Gallatin Construction Board of Adjustment and Appeals.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion been made by Mr. Hayes, seconded by Ms. Love. Any discussion? Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Councilman Alexander.
Yes.
Councilman Fan.
Yes.
Councilman Hayes.
Yes.
Councilwoman Love.
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
5 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you.
Okay.
I know Mr. Tuttle's not here, so Lance, you gonna take number 6?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Evening, council. This is a resolution accepting the public improvements in Cumberland Place North, Phase 1, Section 4. This is part of Smoky Mountain Drive, and it's ready to be accepted.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made, properly seconded. Any discussion? Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes,
6 ayes, 0 nays.
thank you. Mr. Gregory, item number 7.
Yeah, this is a resolution number R2010-55, authorizing the mayor to sign a contract 5/20/2020 with J. Cumbie Construction Company Incorporated for the industrial park pump station that's going in the industrial park.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made, properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Mr. Gregory, item number 8.
Okay, this is resolution number R2010-56, authorizing the mayor to sign a contract 6/20/2020 with Hawkins and Price LLC. And this is for the industrial park force main.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion has been made, properly seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Ms. Kittrell. Mr. Chuck Stewart, dangerous building, 170 Shell Street.
Good evening, council. This building was declared a dangerous building on 1/7/2020 by the council. And it seemed like COVID kind of might have gotten in our way here, but you gave them 90 days to come in with a plan or to begin renovations or to demolish the building, and it kind of got away from us, so we're going to bring it back forward again once we found it.
Has anything been done to improve it?
No, ma'am, nothing's been done and no one's contacted us.
I did check today because they said they were trying to sell the building and it is still owned by the same owners. But because it is such a severe remedy, we wanted to make sure before we began any demolition that that was still the council's intent. And so I would recommend that you bring them back before council and then move forward.
So can you bring them back before council by this time, by the next council meeting, Susan?
Not by the next council meeting.
So we need to move this one to, what, 3 weeks?
Yes, whatever. It has to be between 10 and 30 days.
Give us a date you want to bring this back, Susan.
Chuck, do you have the calendar in front of you?
November 3rd is going to be the next council meeting, which is election night.
So we could do it November 3rd. We already have some others on the agenda for that evening.
So is there a motion to move this to November the 3rd, put it on the council?
Motion. Yeah.
Second.
Motion has been made by Mr. Hayes, second by Ms. Love. Any discussion? Ms. Kittrell, call the roll, please.
Vice Mayor Camp,
Aye.
Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
6 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Ms. McCauley, item number 11.
Yes, council, I'm here before you tonight because on October the 6th, I received a written request from Mr. Pascal Javance to start or initiate an ethics investigation against Councilman Sean Fennell. The request included in your packet has allegations of the sign ordinance, violations of the municipal code, and then there was one allegation of violation of the ethics. The first complaint that was in the email that's in your packet dealt with a section of the sign ordinance, so I have referred that to planning for them to follow up. That was the section 13.07.05K violation. The second alleged violation was section 16.16E, and that prohibits parking a vehicle in a parking space adjacent to a public street. The police department enforces this section of the code, so I've referred that to the police department, and I spoke with Chief Bandy today. He said he's not aware of any violations at this time of that section. The third thing that was in the email was a violation of the ethics code, and that's section 2-7B that deals with use of municipal time and facilities. And specifically, the complaint is that there were signs on a fence across the street from the Civic Center that was on the city's property. Mr. Jovance had an email string, all of that is in your packet, with the planning department about whether or not signs could be placed on public property. And the answer was a general no, which was a correct answer. However, when I started researching this and found where this particular sign was located, the Civic Center is a polling place. And so in the past, the city has not allowed any signs on public property except for polling places. And that's because state code does control polling place allegations or signs, I'm sorry, political signs. And that's TCA section 2-111. Those signs have been taken down to my knowledge, but I did want to bring this to your attention because, and I'll just read to you what the actual complaint would be when it's dealing with use of municipal time. An official or employee may not use or authorize the use of municipal time, facilities, equipment, or supplies for private gain or advantage to any private person or entity except as authorized by legitimate contract or lease that's determined by the city council to be in the best interest of the city. So when I receive any complaint that deals with a council member by section 2-10 of the ethics code, I am considered the ethics officer, and under 2-10, when a complaint about a sitting council member is brought to me, I must take it to city council for the council to determine whether the complaint has merit, determine that the complaint does not have merit, or determine that the complaint has sufficient merit to warrant further investigation. And that's section 2-10B3 of the municipal code. So I'm before you tonight for your determination.
I remember that fence across from the Civic Center has had signs on it for years during the elections.
And when I was researching that, investigating, I did find that's true. And most cities do have policies that regulate signs at polling places. The city of Gallatin does not. It would be my recommendation going forward. Of course, we can't correct this right now, but the city, if we're going to continue to allow the Civic Center to be a polling place, that we do set some type of policy.
So it sounds like there's no merit to them. So I make a motion, there's no merit to these allegations.
I second that.
Any further discussion?
I got a question.
Okay, Mr. Campbell.
Mr. Brown give them permission, or Parks Department give them permission to hang the signs up there, or they just do it on their own?
It is my understanding that Mr. Brown did not give permission and that it was a volunteer who hung the sign up. That is my understanding.
Say it again, I didn't understand you.
It's my understanding that neither Mr. Brown nor anyone at the Parks Department gave him or Mr. Lee, who also had a sign up, permission to hang signs on the fence, and that that volunteers from Councilman Fennell's camp is the one who put the signs on the fence.
Okay.
Have the sign been removed?
Yes.
Signs have been removed.
Okay.
Both signs have been removed.
Any further questions? Ms. Kittrell, call the roll.
Vice Mayor Camp,
I abstain. I don't know what voting on.
No merit to the allegations.
I'll abstain.
Okay. Councilman Alexander,
Yes.
Councilman Fan,
Yes.
Councilman Hayes,
Yes.
Councilwoman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Overton.
Yes.
5 ayes, 1 abstention.
While we're talking about this, and this is under other business, have we got a ruling on signs being on right-of-way property from the state? Anybody can answer that wants to answer it. Mayor, Susan, anybody?
I can answer that. I had some discussions with the attorney for TDOT recently because we had received an email from a citizen who said that signs could be in state right-of-way, and someone from TDOT had confirmed that. So I knew that there were some statutes that I thought prohibited that. I contacted the attorney with TDOT after Mr. McCord and I discussed it at Mr. McCord's recommendation. And the attorney had told me that she would get us an email that it was not allowed, and we did receive an email. I believe it was this afternoon. I don't remember, but at some point today we received an email that signs cannot be placed in the state right-of-way. You can let Mr. McCord, that's really more his area than mine, but you may want to let Mr. McCord speak to that.
Mr. McCord?
Yes, what we intend to do now that we've got that information from the state is to provide notice to those candidates. It's primarily candidates, although there are other signs, commercially related signs, yard sale signs, buy my junk car signs, buy my mattress, you name it, that have been placed in the right of way in violation of our code. So we're going to remove those signs after we give a 2-day notice. We're going to give notice by tomorrow, and by any sign not removed out of the right of way, we will remove ourselves.
So when are you going to start removing the signs out of the right of ways, Bill?
That should be Friday.
Okay.
Can you
So
give
all
an
those
example?
candidates, and
That answered my question.
we don't know the other folks that have put signs up.
Bill, can somebody give an example of state right-of-way that has had signs?
All of the numbered routes that go through the city, that's 109, 31E, 174, and 25. All of those are numbered routes that are state roads. Now, we are removing signs from city-maintained roads or rights-of-way. Until we got this memo from the state, we were not doing that on the state roads. So those are the major roads that we have in our community for the most
So
part.
all the signs you see on the state fences, on the right of ways, and all of them will be removed?
We will, either by us or by those persons that we were able to get in touch with to ask them to remove them.
But if they're not removed by Friday, you'll remove them all?
That's right.
Okay.
That doesn't include private property.
No, not
just state right of ways.
So Mr. McCoy, Mr. Susan, is there any penalty for removing somebody else's sign without permission?
No, I guess it's theft. So that would be that's not something we will enforce in our department. That would be a police matter.
Isn't it different if it's on your property and somebody that has trespassed to put the sign on your property? We probably shouldn't be getting into legal advice.
I have, like having a sign and somebody remove it without your permission.
Susan?
Well, I don't know if you're talking about if it's in the right of way or if
No, it's on private property.
That's against the law for anybody to move it.
theft, and you should report that to the police department.
Gotcha.
Anything under other business?
Oh, I have a few things. I'm sorry.
I thought you did.
Yeah, and they're really quick, I promise. I did want to let you all know that tomorrow they will be shooting a music video around town. It's for a pretty well-known artist. It should be fun. The police department's working with them to get that done. We think we've got it where there are no road closures associated. Also wanted to mention that I failed to mention and give props to Connie Flood, who has spent her birthday night with us tonight. So happy birthday to Connie Flood. Happy birthday to David Brown on the 18th. And since Rosemary Bates is with us, happy birthday to her on the 21st. And then the final thing is, I would like to ask, just for the public's information, that Ms. Kittrell kind of give an update on the current tax situation, because in case you haven't noticed, they're not out yet.
Thanks, Mayor.
No
Yes,
problem.
our municipal code always requires that city property tax notices should be out October 1. I do not have my completed file. I have my file from the county, but it has to go to other sources before it comes back to me. So I do not have that file yet. And once I do receive the file, it takes another probably a good 3 weeks to have that file ready to go out. So if I were to get it tomorrow, it would still be probably 3 weeks before the taxes would even go out. And it's real important that we take the time to ensure that you get the correct amount and the correct piece of mail. And so that's just real important that all of that is gone over and we do the proper work to make sure everything's in order. So just be patient. We're doing the best we can do. We need the money in just like everyone else, but hopefully we'll get that out and get that to you hopefully sometime probably the 1st of November. But
So
if it's before then that'll be great.
So, Ms. Kittrell, since we haven't got our taxes in a timely manner, does that mean all our taxes are exempt for this year?
I don't think so, John.
Okay, just asking.
Well,
I know. Right.
I mean, just a lot of people like to have that, John D. Anything else, Mayor?
I've got a statement I want to make on this gas tax I spoke about earlier.
Okay.
Someone said it had to be for the roads. I don't know if that could include the city roads. Just as an example, 2 of my previous convenience stores, 1 cent per gallon, based on what I used to sell per month, for bringing $7,000 a month. Just those 2 stores.
Wow.
We could budget our road money. We could designate that for the road money, then we could put some of the road money we got now into the general fund for other projects.
Susan, you're gonna check on it for us, right?
You muted.
The main thing is to present it as we're going to use it for our roads, and we will.
Yes, I'll be researching that. I'll get back with you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Steve. Anybody else? Mary, you have anything else? Mayor's all done. Department heads, any department head? Have anything?
Y'all sleep.
Mr. McCord's got his hand raised.
Yeah, literally. Yes, I just wanted to report to you at the last council committee meeting, there was discussion briefly about reviewing our fence regulations based primarily on a variance case that we had. So we had a brief discussion on that 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago at our last council committee meeting. We also had a discussion about that at the Planning Commission work session last night, and we'll be drafting some language that would modify the code pertaining to fences in certain circumstances that will go through the Planning Commission and eventually come back to the council for consideration.
Anything else? Any other department heads?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
All right. I just want to give you an update on the swimming pool at the Civic Center.
Okay.
We put it out to bids. We received the bids. We only got 2 bids. One of them was kind of questionable because the people never showed up. They said they did it by Google Maps, so we questioned that. It is in the insurance hands. They have them. It's a little over $300,000. They're trying to decide now if they want to rebid or whatever. So it's in the insurance hands now. We're getting quite a few calls.
We're getting calls too, David, so that's good. I appreciate the update. Anything else, David?
No, and no, I did not get permission to put signs on the fence. They've been there for years. And then when I understood that they could because of the state law about the polling places, but it would be a good idea for us to say 100 yards from the polling place or whatever, so we would know.
Yeah.
State law mandates that it has to be 100 yards from the polling place.
More than 100 yards?
Yes.
Oh yeah, well, it's more than 100 yards, but maybe we could eliminate something.
Well, I do think that the city, I would recommend that the city look at setting some type of policy about the number of signs, when they can be put up, that type of thing, as other cities have done.
Susan,
I agree.
Susan, can I mention, would these signs also be subject to regulation by the Reed versus Gilbert decision, where we can't regulate content of signs?
Well, Mr. McCord, every other city has these policies. We do have a statute, that 2-7-111 that I referenced, that talks about signs at polling places.
Correct, but is that a content-based sign?
Mr. McCord, that's a discussion for another time. You and I can have. I'm happy to have that. I guess
Yeah.
at that time we can.
It's not the time to have it right now, Bill.
Okay.
We've been here for 2 hours tonight.
Asking.
Any other department head?
I've got one other thing to say about those signs. Some of y'all may or may not be aware. It's my understanding that an HOA cannot control your political sign if you want to put it in your yard. So you might need that in consideration also.
That's correct. That's a fairly new state law as well.
That's interesting. That's good to know.
You say they cannot?
They cannot tell you, if you own a house in there, they cannot tell you to put your own sign or somebody else's. They can't take it down legally.
Good information. Anybody else? Any other department head? Any other business? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? Yes.
Mr. Alexander, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Y'all have a great night. Thank you.
Anybody want to adjourn? Great.